Ready, guys? Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is now 5:01, Tuesday, November 30th, 2021. Welcome to the Calexico Unified School District Board of Trustees, a special board meeting. Item A, opening items. A1, call to order. Janet?
Trustees present this evening are Trustee Alvarado, Trustee Lorenzo Calderon Jr., and Trustee Ciro Calderon. With Trustee Romero and Trustee Magallanes absent, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Janet. A2, pledge of allegiance. Would you please stand up? Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Item B, comments from the public. The board will take any and all comments from the public related to the sole item on the agenda. Janet, do we have any comments?
No comments.
Thank you. Item C, discussion, possible action, C1, process for superintendent search. Do we have, I know we have a presentation. Is he ready? Oh, okay.
We have Dr. Rasmussen on attendance. Dr. Rasmussen, feel free to unmute your mic and enable your camera if needed. Thank you.
Okay, there we go. Good evening. Can you all hear me? Okay.
Yes. Barely.
Okay. Well, thank you for inviting me tonight. My understanding was I was going to share some information that I shared with the board, I think 2 or 3 years ago. And I sent you copies of that a PowerPoint that I presented to the board. So with your direction, how would you like me to follow in the presentation this evening?
Well, sorry, this is Mr. Calderon. Just go ahead and give us an overview of what you gave us 4 years ago, or I should say 3 years ago.
Okay, I didn't hear that last part of it.
Just an overview of what the process was that we followed 3 years
okay.
ago.
From 2 years ago?
Yeah, 3 years ago, yes.
Okay, yeah.
Thank
Well,
you.
originally when I came down, Mr. Ware from the San Diego office invited me down, and the board was at that point wanting to understand different options that they had when they were going to be searching for a new superintendent. And so at that time, I presented what I felt were 3 options. Actually, there may be a 4th one, but I didn't put it in there. I'll just bring it up to you. And so tonight, what I wanted to do is just review those with you. And then if you have any questions as we go through, we can stop. And I'll be happy to answer them as we go along if any of the board members would like to discuss any of the options. As you know, searching for a superintendent is probably the most critical role that you're going to play as board members, because that individual is going to be working as a team member with the board to set and implement all the policies and procedures that the board has identified. And so it's really important that the process that you identify, number one, is going to fit your needs and will reflect what you are hoping for in finding a new leader. What I identified in the first was what I felt were three options. And the first option was for a board that whenever they're going to be looking for a new superintendent, they can always ask for an RFP from the various search firms. And there's 5 that are pretty prevalent around California. They're all very reputable, and the consultants are very experienced superintendents, and in some cases, board members. And they will come in and with a fixed fee, a set fee, assist the board in searching for a new superintendent. The second option is the board can conduct their own search, and they do everything. And I'll talk about some pros and cons of each one of these. And then the third option that the board can consider is they can conduct the search, but they can bring a facilitator on as a board facilitator to make sure that the whole process is run smoothly. In essence, that facilitator will make sure that every step is followed, just like a search firm would follow. But throughout the whole process, the board is making the decisions each step of the way. You're not turning it over to a search firm. You're actually controlling the process and making the critical decisions. The fourth option, and I didn't put it in the information that I sent you, is oftentimes smaller districts, and definitely you're not a smaller district, but sometimes a county office will do a search for you and charge a fee. I don't see many county offices doing it, except maybe in Northern California, where there's some smaller districts of 600 or 1,000 students, ADA. So, so when you look at your three options, the search firm, the board doing the search, or having an advisor or facilitator work with the board, let me start with the search firm. There's some of the benefits of using a search firm is that it's the least amount of time for the board to work on this process. They usually bring in a wide range of candidates for the board. As I said before, all the firms are very reputable. All the information is their protocols, and so it's confidential and not subject to any kind of disclosure, and there's objectivity in the process. Some of the concerns might be for the board that depending on the firm that you hire, it can be the most expensive process, anywhere from maybe $2,000 to $5,000 more. It has the lowest level of board involvement, and in the selection process, one of the concerns that you want to make sure is that there is a close matchup to the board criteria on what they're looking for and the candidate they're bringing in. That when you deal with a search firm, you just want to make certain that they are canvassing statewide and sometimes nationally for an individual, and not having a stable or candidates in a stable that they're really just going to kind of bring in for you to review. The board conducting the search. So if you choose, well, we might not want to go with the RFP with the search firm. We can do it ourselves. And some boards have done this, and it's a lot of work, and it's probably you're going to be spending more time on a process than you're paid for in your job. Let me put it to you that way. It's the least expensive of the options, but it has the highest degree of involvement by the board and the highest degree of time, your time allotment. And but it gives you maximum control. You control everything. The concerns is how much labor intensive it is for the board members. And many board members, you work or you have other obligations during the day or in the evening. And that's when a lot of this work is done. And so you're just going to be adding this to your normal workload. You have the potential maybe to miss key steps in the process that would hinder that process or put you at a disadvantage. It also requires a lot of collaboration with the board, a lot of communication, and there's also maybe an issue of confidentiality. I've seen that come up. And then the third option that I spoke about was a search advisor. And this is a process that started a couple of years ago. And that's a process where the board has a major involvement in directing the search, starting from identifying the criteria, looking at key stakeholders, communication, the whole range and directing that facilitator throughout the process on the direction of the board. The advisor addresses all the key tasks and processes per board direction. And so nothing is done without the board majority or board consensus giving that direction. The process followed by a search advisor is very similar to a search firm. In fact, almost activity to activity. There are some nuances and differences. And it can cost less than a search firm proposal coming in. Usually the advisor is not working at a set fee of $25,000 or $20,000 or $30,000, depending on the size of the district. They're just working on an hourly basis, and their pay stops when the board stops either the search, or sometimes boards will start searches and they'll say, you know, we have someone inside, we don't want to continue the search. With a search advisor, you would stop the search and all your obligation for payment is up to that time. And so those three processes are the ones I think that are available to you. I would not recommend the board doing the search on your own. I just think it's far too encompassing of your time, and you know, you're elected to make decisions, and you should have staff in there to bring you that information, and then you give the direction that you see fit. That I can tell you the typical selection process from when you start is going to be around 4 months. It could go longer, it could go shorter, but I always say just plan on about 4 months. But if you're going to go out for a search advisor, you're gonna have your HR department put out an RFP for proposals. Once you select someone, then you're going to have a planning meeting. You're going to have to identify those key stakeholders, community members, to gather input on what they're looking for in a superintendent. And by the way, that's a critical step in a process, whether you use an advisor or you use a search firm. I would strongly recommend through surveys and through face-to-face meetings with key groups, community groups, and it could be your DLAC committee, it could be PTAs, it could be management team, it could be City Hall, it could be a number of groups that you identify to identify the characteristics that the community is looking for. And that information is important for you to take in during this process as you make your decision. Once you approve, you gather this information and you approve criteria, we're gonna open up, or the search firm or the advisor will open up the process. And it's normally through EdJoin, which by the way goes nationally as well. We've done search firms or searches for superintendents, and we put them in EdJoin, and lo and behold, we'll get 9 applicants from back east, because it's a highly viewed website for jobs here in California. After the applications period is open, it's usually could be 4 to 6 weeks, could be shorter if you want a shorter time span. A screening committee will then review all the candidates based upon the criteria that the board has identified for a new superintendent. Getting community input is a first step that's critical. The screening process is the second step that is extremely critical, because that is a time when you're screening candidates, you're vetting candidates, you're looking at their background to determine if they're going to be a match or a fit for Calexico. And it's not only with their immediate superiors and people that they work for. You want to look at their history. You want to look into their progression and their careers to make sure that they're going to be a match for the district. Once these candidates are vetted, and then they're shared with the board. A search firm will usually bring in anywhere from 10 to 12 candidates for you to review that meet your criteria. A search advisor will bring in all the applications, and they will break them out into groups that this group meets all, the center group meets most, and the third group doesn't meet any of your criteria. But then the board members have an opportunity to review all the candidates if they want to. Once you review candidates, you've identified your criteria, then the board will select anywhere from 4 to 6 candidates. You'll hold your interviews over 2 days, and then you will identify a successful candidate. And then after that, I would advise you to get your attorney involved in this process because there are certain legal areas that have to be addressed in the selection and the approval of the superintendency. Just some considerations that I'd like to share with the board, and this was in the last page of the handout that I sent, is whatever search that you do, whether you as a board decide you're going to do proposals for a search firm, or you're going to look at an advisor to come in and work with the board, or you're going to do it yourself, confidentiality of applicants is paramount. When superintendents are applying for jobs, most of the ones that you're going to want to look at already have a job, and maybe they're going to want to move up, maybe they're making a change for whatever reason, and you might have 10 qualified applicants applying for the superintendency, and you're only going to hire one. Well, you can imagine if the names got out of those other 9 that they were applying out, and then they had to go back and meet their board, and that creates a whole different issue for those candidates. So what we share with the board is confidentiality is critical, and most superintendents, if they're not assured that there is strict confidentiality, will not apply, and you can lose a possible good candidate that way. Again, it's about a 4-month process. It could go longer, it could go shorter, depending on I've seen searches as short as 9 weeks, and I've seen searches as long as 6 months. And so it's just going to be depending on the process. The other aspect that I would share with the board, whether you use a search advisor or you use a search firm, I would strongly recommend that when you talk with your contact, whether it's a search firm or the advisor, that you make it clear that you want to have access to all the applications, not that you're going to maybe choose one over another or some, but you need to see the flavor of all the people that are applying. And you may have questions. Why wasn't this person brought in? Because they may meet an interest of this board. And so I would recommend that for this board. The other point in a search process that I and my colleagues believe are critical, besides the vetting and the background check, is a community input, and that starts right at the beginning of your search, and that can take probably 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, depending on how many people the board wants the consultants to contact, how many meetings. Some of the meetings can be done by Zoom, some are done in person. We also recommend that a survey be done of all your constituents. And we even suggest that you add in other things, areas into your survey to let the community assess and give feedback on your programs in your district, because it's a good process for a new superintendent coming in to see this impact And also the information can be used with your LCAP. I know other districts have done it in the past. So that's kind of it in a nutshell as far as the processes that you can go through, those 3 processes. What is critical for boards, the input, community input, the vetting, and the background checking, and then reviewing the applications, and then trusting the consultant and the search advisors that you're working with, and having open communication. The question I would ask, would you be getting weekly feedback from these consultants? Are they giving you updates, just like your superintendent gives you your Friday update? Are you given an update on the search process? Boards have to be kept in that loop throughout this whole process. And so these are some of the things that when you're interviewing people, you want to possibly ask them, how do they conduct those input from all your key stakeholders out there? You have associations, you have management team, you have parents, you have committee members, you have community. I mean, there's just a wide range of people. And the more information you get from them will help you make a better decision. That's kind of it in a nutshell. Unless you have some questions, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do you guys have any questions? Mr. Calderon, Mr. Alvarado? No, at this point, I think it's pretty clear. You get the 3 options. One option one of the options that you mentioned, which is whether the board wants to do this on its own, or using a mediator. Do the Brown Act rules apply?
That's something I would ask that you'd ask your attorney. I think through the most of the information that that we're involved in is through open session. So when you're identifying your criteria, you're getting feedback on the stakeholder information. All that is an open session. Where it goes into closed session is when you're starting to review applications, or you're going to go into your interview process. You'll go into closed session. Through that whole process, that's where your attorney is so valuable in guiding us or the board through that process to make sure that everything is done legally and correctly.
Oh, okay. That was my question. Well, if the board doesn't have any more questions or comments, thanks for this presentation, and I think it's clear to the board now what is it that we need to do. So thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So, board members, any questions or comments? Thank you.
I have none. Just the only thing is this, what he didn't recommend was for us to be that heavily involved, and that's one of those things where
Yeah.
I'd feel a lot better just utilizing a search firm like we did last time.
Okay, Lencho? Mr. Calderon? No? No, thank you. Okay, that was C1 process for superintendent search. Item D, adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion
Second.
by Mr. Calderon Jr., second by Mr. Alvarado. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. It is now 5:25. Thanks. It'd be fun if I had said.